Hey guys, I got a cool product today to show you. This Optolong L-Pro filter. This is for Canon full frame. They make it for other brands, and they also make it for APS-C sensors, which is your crop sensors. This is what it looks like. Optolong is a Chinese company. Not a lot of people are familiar with them because they don't have a lot of exposure in the United States. But if you pull up H-alpha filters and that sort of thing, you should run into that name at some point. They've got some really interesting videos online, and they're a little bit more reasonably priced than some of your better names. And for that reason, I was interested in testing it out. And I used a bunch of different lenses and equipment to do my test and see exactly how it worked in the field. So I'll show you that. But before I get started, I'll show you how to do an install with these things, how it's typically put into the camera. For this example, I'm using a Canon 6D full frame camera because this is a full frame clip, and the full frame series of astro filters is relatively new. As you can see, here's the camera body with mirror lockup, and you just hit the shutter and the mirror should pop up and it just drops right in. The two little tabs that are off the sides will fit right into place there. Now, as a special note, if you're using a 5D Mark IV, I believe it is, there's issues with the Mark series and the full frames where they don't fit. You'll have to look at the distributor's website to get the exact camera models that don't work with. But as you can see, it's installed here, and I just changed the aperture slightly to show you that it does work. And I've had absolutely no issues with the install. Fits real nice, just sets right on top, and it doesn't let the mirror swing down once it's installed, so there's no fear of damaging your equipment that way. One important note that I should make before I get into my examples is that when this is installed, your focus will change from what it typically is at infinity. For example, a very popular camera lens for astrophotography is this Rokinon 14mm f2.8, and typically I can roll the focuser all the way to one side and slightly back and be at infinity, and the difference is about that much on a turn on the focuser once you've installed the filter. So your lenses and your equipment will not focus at the same point. So far, I haven't had an issue with any of the lenses that I've used or the equipment, but with a camera lens that's limited on focus travel, that may be an issue. So the L-Pro series filter was designed with color balance in mind, and it's supposed to let really high percentage of your hydrogen alpha through and things like that, but reduce the sodium and mercury vapor light from artificial lighting. And also designated as L-Pro, in the description, it's supposed to maintain a fairly decent color balance. A lot of your filters will throw off your color balance quite a bit. And if you're into astrophotography, you know that you have to balance your colors in RGB anyway. So I've never had a product that I thought was so extreme that I couldn't correct it. But I will say that from my results, it's a little blue shifted. I'll show you that. But overall, it maintains pretty good color balance, just as they said. And it also reduces man-made artificial lighting. I personally live in a Bortle 6, and I'd say that depending on the time of the year, that it's between a 6 and a 7. But the actual dark sky finder map will show that I live in a 6. And in my current situation, I have street lights all in my face, and it did cut all of that, and also it cut the light from my house, from my windows. I'm really impressed with that. I was a little skeptical when I saw the company's initial product photography that they did, but I can confirm that it's accurate. It does work exactly as a light pollution filter should work, and there's no deterioration in image quality based on the shots that I have taken with various lenses and equipment, and I'll get onto that now. So for my testing, I shot with and without the filter, in every case with the same exposure settings, the same white balance, the same pretty much everything, and I tried to shoot in a duration where it was as immediate as it could be behind each shot. And what you're seeing here is an unfiltered shot of the sky in Bortle 6 directly over the top of my house facing south. And you can notice easily how there's a lot of sky glow, light pollution. This was done with a Rokinon 14mm f2.8. And the next shot, I want you to pay close attention to the amount of highlight coming from the windows of my house as I'm pointing up over the top of it. And you see here clearly that the Optolong L-Pro filter cut that down so much, in fact, that you can actually see detail in the windows, and that's with the same exposure settings. Here's a shot I took facing south with a 50mm f1.8 Canon lens, and to point out that there's no loss in nebulosity transmission, you can easily see where the amount of detail is the same. You'll have absolutely zero problem focusing on stars with this filter installed. There's little to no difference. There's a slight darkening effect, but at anything above, I'd say 800 ISO, I was picking up stars really well. The main advantage that you gain is that you can expose for longer, and I'll show you that in the next histogram. So here what you're seeing is the unfiltered RGB histogram directly off the live view of the screen, and then the filtered version of it where the blue is shifted to the right. That's easily correctable in post-process, and like I said before, you will be working with your RGB channels anyway in astrophotography. But the important thing to notice is the position of the light in the histogram. To me, right first glance, it's about 2 stops difference, which means I'm going to get a lot more exposure time out of this filter than I would be able to do without it in a light polluted city. And the greatest advantage there is your gain in exposure time. So if you're working with 2-minute subs plus, it's going to allow you more time before you get that blowout effect that you would typically get in a light polluted area such as mine. In this example, I shot directly into the street lights and towards the city, which is east of me, and you can easily see in the first photo how much light pollution I have to deal with at Bortle 6. And in the second filtered version, pay close attention to the corner by the trees where the street light from a storage unit is directly in my face. And you'll notice that you'll see and observe quite a bit more detail in the tree line. And that's an example of how this is cutting the wavelengths of artificial man-made lights and allowing you to see more details. So ultimately, it's an effective filter for what its purpose is, and it works. Let's say you live somewhere where your neighbor has street lights, or you live in a city where you have street lights affecting you. This will definitely reduce the amount of transfer of that nanometer of wavelength to your images. So for you guys who are in almost impossible conditions, this is a really good filter. If you live in Bortle 4 or below, I don't see any particular need in owning this. I think that you can manage without it. For guys that are doing CCD imaging, obviously you probably have absolutely zero interest in this because you're doing narrowband imaging, and in most cases you can survive in areas where it would seem to most people virtually impossible to image. For me, I'm really impressed with it. I've used other filters, and I think that this is a cheaper alternative to the same CLS filter that you get with major brands. So I would recommend it highly for that.